Is the death of the quiet writer here? I'd say maybe. What we really need to consider as authors nowadays is, are we a brand first and an author second? Or are we an author first and a brand second? Do we need to have a brand at all when we think about our writing careers? I'm Kendall and this is Plot to Print, and this topic is certainly something that I've been thinking about a lot. I've written around a dozen novels now, and I've kind of had this stage in my development on my mind for a while. I'm writing in a new genre. I don't really have that much exposure for this new pen name that I'm going to be writing under, and I'm kind of beginning to think, I'm around maybe 15 20,000 words into my draft right now, and I'm starting to kind of think, do I need to start to build a social media presence around A, my new pen name, and B, the book that I'm working on? And so this might be a question that you've asked yourself too, no matter what stage of the publishing journey that you're on. It's certainly something that we really need to consider, especially when we see so many other authors doing it. We a lot of times hear as authors that even traditional publishing houses like the top 5 are really going to pay attention to the amount of followers that you have, and that's really going to weigh on their decisions as to whether your book is published or not, or at least picked up with them, picked up by an agent, and so on and so on. It's definitely true that we're living in interesting times right now. I'd say that hustle culture kind of has a little bit to do with why we all feel the need to not only monetize our hobbies, which is a whole different conundrum we can get into, but also we really feel a need to start to begin to build some sort of brand around ourselves at a very early stage in our career development. And so for this case, when we talk about career, it's going to be writing. So the question really is, can the reclusive writer that we sort of romanticize and probably still exists to some sort of extent, can that reclusive writer still exist in today's very social media aligned lifestyle and landscape? I'd say probably yes. There are probably some authors who've had some success staying away from the limelight, focusing solely on their creative pursuits, and really just sort of letting maybe their marketing team or publicists really do a lot of the heavy work. I'd say for a lot of us, especially if we're going the self-publishing route, that's not necessarily an option for us. If you know anything about self-publishing, or you're used to it already, or you have read a lot about it, you really have to be a jack of all trades. So that really means that you are doing the marketing, you're doing all the publicity for it, and so on and so on. So for a lot of us, in self-publishing at least, that's not really an option for us to kind of outsource that work. I'd say also for traditional publishing is at a weird kind of time. I don't know that they necessarily have the same amount of resources available to really highly publicize every book that they decide to take on. There may be some books that they're really going to throw a lot of money at, but there may be other books that they've still decided are good, they want it as part of their catalog. But I think the author really is going to be set in charge of hopefully making that book a success and earning their royalties back, their advances, and things like that. So to say that even if we got published by a top publishing house, that we could step away from all marketing attempts and branding attempts, I think that is really, for me, it's a dream come true. But it is kind of high pie in the sky, where I don't think it's quite realistic to think we're just going to let a whole team take care of that process and not have to worry about it at all. I think also when we start to consider delving more into social media, like a lot of social media, we're going to run into a situation where comparison is sort of the thief of joy, and we're going to start to see authors who are, maybe they've been doing social media a longer time than us, they are doing better at it. I see this at least a lot with a lot of younger people. They grew up with it. They really, really know the way to market themselves, to market their books, they're good at graphic design, all kinds of things. Not to say that older authors aren't as well, but I'd say that a lot of younger authors definitely have that technological background and approach that really allows them to excel. And I think they grew up with social media too, where it's not this daunting thing for them. For me, I'm around the age where social media came out when I was probably right at the cusp of adulthood. So I did grow up with it, but at the same time, I still remember a world without it, and I remember working on stories and books without it and things like that. So I'm sort of definitely caught in a world between. And this isn't to say that there's not younger authors who want nothing to do with social media, and there's not older authors who really, really enjoy and embrace all that social media has to offer. But I'd say when you're first starting out on social media, you can definitely run into the situation where a lack of response can make you feel unmotivated. Let's say you're making posts and you're really not seeing maybe that many likes or that many comments or engagement on what you're posting. It can really, I think, start to get the better of you when you're in the early stages of a project, because not only are you kind of struggling to convey what you're working on and showcase it to the world, which you might just feel nervous about in general, but now if you're not getting that feedback that we're all used to, where likes equate to whether something is good or worth it or a project worth continuing, we really can start to question, oh, is this a book that anyone's going to be interested in? Should I keep going with this? And I think that kind of echo chamber that social media creates can really affect the creative process in a not so great way. We also sort of run into this situation where we now have to convey what we're working on in a tangible way and in bite-sized pieces. That becomes really, really hard also, especially if you are just an author or writer. You don't really have a graphic design background, you don't spend a lot of time on social media, you're not into making reels, etc., etc. So I think it can definitely be an uphill battle starting out on social media. So back to the question of whether or not the quiet author can survive in today's landscape where you need a brand, you need a social media presence. I'd say from my own experience, at least a couple years ago, which is not that long, social media was obviously still a thing, you definitely can. I wrote a book that was successful without having much social media presence at all. The book did very well on the platform it was published on, and I didn't really have any social media presence at all. I had a mailing list at the time that had a few subscribers. I mainly found advanced readers to do reviews through a website service. Other than that, before I hit publish that day, I really didn't have any kind of presence except for a couple of other books that I had written under that same pen name that hadn't done tremendously well. I don't think I had like some built-in audience who was salivating over my next book. I think what I got right for this book at least was that I got the marketing right, I got my blurb, my title, my cover, all those things kind of hit a nice trifecta so that when I did go to publish, the algorithm started to pick it up. It was pushing it out to more people, the people who it thought, it would want to read it. The algorithm thought would want to read it. They did want to read it, and so on and so on. So that really helped me. And then I would start to see people push out to my social media because they were interested, they were engaged in what I wrote already, and so then they started to kind of filter out to my social media channels. But to say that I had some kind of social media presence that was big and pushed people towards the book is really anything but. And I'd say that this is kind of the part of the journey that did bite me a little bit, because I went into that being social media adverse. Once I did have some exposure, I really didn't know how to take advantage of that exposure in a way that I could capitalize on new followers that I was gaining. I think with social media, a lot of times as authors, and for me at the time at least, I really wanted to be this faceless presence who just posted quotes from my book or different variations of cover art and stuff like that. And that really wasn't yes, it would connect with some readers, but it really wasn't showing that I was like an actual person working on things. It was almost just kind of like a page where I tried to sell books. And I think that if you're coming across as just someone who's trying to sell books, which yes, you are, but you're also not coming across as like a real person who has genuine passion for what you're working on, who's excited about what you're working on, who has other things going on in their life that you're willing to share with your readers and your audience. I think it can be really, really hard. And I think a lot of authors would prefer if they could just be like, this is my Instagram, and here's my the cover of my book. Here's the next book I'm working on. Here's maybe a shot of my document. You know, just basic things like that. That can work to some extent, but it definitely is not going to, I think, connect with a new audience, and it's not necessarily going to connect with your readers as well as it should. I'd say at minimum, if you don't want to, you know, go down the path of Instagram or TikTok, at least have a mailing list that you can filter readers out to. So I think that's super, super important. You can build a mailing list for free on websites like MailChimp or MailerLite. But a mailing list is basically people who said, yes, I'm interested in this author. I want to know updates about you. They're willing to actually give you their email address. So go ahead and email me. So those are really your most rabid and voracious fans, the people who've said, yes, I'm interested in you emailing me. I want updates from you. So take advantage of that. A mailing list, I know we were kind of like, no one uses email, but yes, they do. You can see your clicks to conversion, you know, on my experiences with MailChimp at least. You can see who's opening up your email, not specifically, but you can see how many people have opened it, and you can see, you know, how engaged your audience is. And a mailing list is a whole other sort of can of worms where you want to have titles for your emails that inspire people to open them up. You want to have previews of your book, previews of cover art, other updates about what you're working on, sales, coupons, things like that. Give them a reason to open up your mailing list and click. And you probably want to send it at least 1 to 2 times a month. I can do another video on that, but I'd say if you don't want to be on social media, at least capitalize on the people who say that they're interested in you by starting a mailing list. Also, a good thing to have if you're delving into your publishing journey is to make sure that your bios are filled out. So let's say you're on Amazon, you're on Goodreads. Make sure that the bios that are attached to your pen name, your author name, are filled out at least with something about you. Usually you want to make this pretty short. You want to make it easy to digest, maybe just where you're from, if you have pets, what your hobbies are. You sort of kind of want to make it also a little bit relatable to the genre that you're in. So if you write, you know, cozy mysteries, maybe try to say, hey, you love cuddling up with your black cat, or whatever. You don't have to have a black cat, but you get it. You love cuddling up with your black cat and, you know, watching Murder, She Wrote. I don't know. You kind of just want to make your bio reflect the genre that you're writing in. This is not necessarily something that is set in stone and that you need to do, but it certainly helps. Also, it really helps if you can have a photo of yourself on your author bio. A lot of people choose to use like logos that they also have made. They either design themselves or they outsource that out to a graphic designer. You can also use a logo too, but either an author photo or a logo with your bio can really go a long way to make you look more professional. Also, something to consider is building a website for yourself. A lot of platforms like Wix, for instance, can be really user-friendly to just build yourself like a basic landing page. If you don't want to have an Instagram or TikTok account where you give constant updates, at least having a website will kind of give people a place to go. It'll show that you're serious. You can have your catalog of books there. You can have a bio section. You can have links that lead to where to buy your books, and so on and so on. So if you don't want to have a crazy social media account, at least maybe just have a website in addition to the things I already talked about, like the author bio and the mailing list. So I'd say if you do decide to delve into social media, you should really make it work for you. I was reading a book recently, and the author was basically like, a lot of creatives struggle with using social media in a way that doesn't feel fake and performative. So they start to kind of use it as like an archive for what they're working on. And I thought that this was a really fun approach because you're almost kind of taking your social media account back from a brand or trying to sell things, or like back from your followers. And it becomes almost more of a way for you to record and archive and kind of remember your creative process and all of the steps and maybe the things that are inspiring you and where you were on your journey. So I think that's a really fun idea. And it also just tells us, like, let social media work for you. You don't need to like work for social media. It's gonna be really hard to write a great book and then also have like 40% of your mind thinking about like how can I make a reel that goes viral? Like, what do I need to do? And it's like, you can't do both. Like, maybe you might be lucky to make a reel that goes viral somewhere in your writing journey. But also reels are super short tail. You might see a cool reel by somebody and then never explore their page or look at them again. So I'd say concentrating so much on trying to go viral or get a lot of followers on social media is probably not the best thing you can be doing for your writing career. You definitely should have a page where people can find you. I'd say a good amount of your followers are probably going to be people who are already familiar with your work to some extent. So really, you're just sort of staying in touch with them. Social media is also a cool thing because it's a great networking platform. When I wrote in one specific genre, I would just make friends. I would literally go and friend other authors in the same genre. Some of them were very big, some of them were small like me. But you just would go and friend them, maybe leave a comment on their page. And I've had really big authors friend me back and leave me a comment or share my reels. So people are really, really friendly. I've made connections, great connections with smaller authors too, to share, tips and tricks or insights into the industry. So not only is social media a great place to gain followers and connect with readers, but it's also just a great place for you to network with other authors and people from the industry. So definitely take advantage of that. And I think doing these things will definitely help you grow as a person and grow as an author. So that's about it. Can the quiet author still exist in today's all out there landscape? You probably can. But having some sort of social media presence can definitely work for you. So like I said, your options are a lot. You can have a newsletter, you can have a website, you can make sure your bios are up to date, or you can use your social media accounts as a fun place to have a record of what you're working on and connect with the readers and other authors and people all over the world who are interested in what you're doing. So it doesn't have to be as like big of a thing as you might be making it out to be. And I'm including myself in this too, because when I think about it, sometimes it seems really hard. But I think if we kind of just look at it as a fun way to connect with others, take some of the pressure off of, maybe having 1,000 likes or 100 likes or whatever. It's just there. It's your record. It's a fun way to connect with others. And it's something that's certainly doable. So that would be my 2 cents on the subject. Yes, you can exist without it, but having it makes it a little bit easier. It's definitely a nice thing to have in your author toolkit. So that's it. Do you use social media for your author presence, or are you kind of shying away from it? Let me know, and we'll see you on the next one. This has been Plot to Print. Take care. Give us a subscribe and a like, and we'll see you next time. Bye.